Welcome to this training PowerPoint on top tips for VI friendly classroom. I hope to include tips for setting up your classroom for VI learner and things to think about and things to get ready to include a VI learner in your classroom. The most important thing when setting up and thinking about your classroom for a VI learner is to follow the current recommendations from your QTVI. This could be on an annual report or a visit report. If you're unsure, then you can contact your QTVI to ask for the latest recommendations, because each student is going to be different. I've looked at a general VI student, but obviously there might be things that apply or don't apply to your VI student. So my first sort of top tip is to find the copy of the latest report, and you can ask your SENCO or you can ask your QTVI, and then these will be the recommendations that are suitable for your VI learner in your class and in your school. Another important thing to remember is the student that you've got in your classroom. Ask them what they usually have, how they like things set up, where they normally sit, what equipment they use. They know what works for them and what doesn't work for them, so use that resource that you've got in your classroom as well. Where is it easier for them to have their coat? Where is it easier for them to have equipment? Where's the best place to sit with the lighting? So have a quiet and discreet conversation with your VI student to discuss some of these points. The first thing you need to think about is room layout. You need to think about, is it clutter free? Do the students in the classroom and yourself think about things that could be removed from the floor or removed from the classroom? Think about the position of important equipment. Is it easy to get to the glues, to the scissors? How for the student compared to where they're sitting? Do they have to go past and round lots of tables or lots of other equipment? Could they have their own pot of equipment on their table? Think about the blinds and the lighting. Some things you can't change because of the lighting that you have in your classroom, but you could think about the position of the student. You could think about, do you need to have the blinds down or up, where you need to stand? Again, talking to the student and using your VI recommendations from the QTVI will show what is important for the student of where they need to sit. The tables and the chairs. If the student's got a blue book and a blue table, are they able to pick up this book because of the contrast? So it's like going around your room and having a think of yourself as a student with a vision impairment, or walk around it with the student when there's no other students in there. What's the best place for them to sit? Have a think about where their peg, their locker, their tray, their equipment is. We would normally advise on the end, so they don't have to go in the middle of lots of students. At the top, if it's a row of trays. It's just making everything accessible for the students so that they can be independent, but that it's in an easier place for them to access. The seating position of your VI student is very important. This can depend on a lot on your VI recommendations, but it can also depend on the constraints of your room. Do you have different seating places for your students for numeracy, for literacy? If you're in a secondary school, your students going around lots of different rooms, so you need to try and stick to the same practice in each room. Does the student need to sit at the front because they've got some distance vision and they need to be at the front to see the board? Does your student use technology, so they need to be at the side or at the back so they can be charging that if they need to? Are they working with a teaching assistant? Do they need to have space next to them for the teaching assistant? Have they got a lot of equipment so they might need a double space, so they have a student one side but the other side they have a space? When you're thinking of your seating plan and your seating position, this goes into looking at the recommendations and talking to the student. What works best for them? If some students are unable because of their distance vision to see the board, then what is the best place for them to sit? Is it so they can get to equipment that they might be needing to use in the classroom and their specialist equipment? There is a lot of specialist VI equipment that is available for a student to use in the classroom, and these again are recommended on the QTVI's report. A specialist exercise book will have thicker, bolder lines with extra line spacing and extra wide spacing, and they're available from the Partially Sighted Society. These can be for maths, for numeracy with boxes, and for English, and you can have different sizes and different types of books, and also different colour paper. You need to make sure that if the student is recommended these, you have a good supply of these in school, and the student has them for every subject. A tactile ruler is available from the RNIB shop, and the link is on the slide. There's also other equipment for maths which could be recommended and is also available in the RNIB shop. If a student's using a specialist exercise book, then normally they will have been recommended to use a Beryl Broad pen, and these can be bought from your normal stationery supplier. For practical subjects, has other specialist equipment been recommended? Where do you keep this specialist equipment, especially if you're in a secondary school and the student is moving around? Do they carry it with them? Are all staff aware of the specialist equipment that's needed? For practical subjects, the student will be able to use a range of equipment, which could be slightly adapted equipment that the rest of the class are using, or they might need specialist equipment. All of this equipment could be recommended by the QTVI and can be used by the student in a range of subjects. When you're setting up your classroom and making your classroom VI friendly, you need to think about technology. Technology will have been recommended and provided for the student if it's specialist technology, or the student could be using an iPad. However, the student needs to be independent with this technology. So have they got a specific place that they can charge it? Is there a safe place to keep it? Does it come with a case and a bag? Have you got a robust process for reporting issues with technology? Because we can support you with those, but you need to have a process in place to report this. The student should know that they need to charge it every day, and the student should know how to use the technology independently. If you've got different teachers in the classroom or different people coming in to teach, are they all aware of the technology that the student needs to use? So the student might need to have a place in the classroom to keep their equipment safely, including technology. There's lots of different resources for curriculum access that are recommended for a VI student. The VI recommendation report from the QTVI will include the font size that is needed for the student. So this could be font size 24 on A4 paper, font size 36 on A4 paper. Ensure that different staff members are aware of the size of 36 and 48, and this would be clear in the report, and that work is produced for the student on A4 paper that mirrors this font size. Ensure that resources for the student are clutter free, so that borders or pictures that are not necessary are taken out to simplify the resource for the student. Ensure that the student's not sharing a resource, so that they can have their own resource and have them where they need to be able to visually access these. I talked before about storage, so have the student got a folder if they've got a lot of things on paper that they can store their stuff so that they can easily access them again if they need to. Have they got an extra tray so they can put paper and worksheets? Homework also needs to be as accessible for the student as the classwork. So the same recommendations that have been put in place for the classwork and the resources need to be put in place for homework. Is it in the same font size? Is it on A4 paper? Have they got a Beryl Broad pen at home? Maybe a folder needs to be sent home for the homework so the student can take the different worksheets home and bring it back. If you're sending homework electronically, do we need to give the VI team and yourself support for the parents and the student to access this at home? What equipment have they got home to access it? Everything that the recommendations that we're putting in place need to be put in place for the homework so the student can complete homework. You also need to be thinking beyond the classroom because the same recommendations will apply. So for practical lessons, for assembly, for visitors, for school visits. If a student in class is unable to access the whiteboard and they have enlarged resources or they have technology, they would also need this in an assembly because they're not going to be able to see the presentation at the front or the person standing at the front. In a practical lesson, if the class move to a different room for cooking or for art, the same recommendations need to be in place with the seating plan or the resources or the equipment. So although setting up the VI classroom that the students in for the majority of the time is so important, it's also the other places that the student will visit. At lunchtime, if the student is school dinners, are they able to access the what food is available to them, or do they know that they need to ask, can you tell me what's for dinner? So all of these recommendations need to be put in place to make the environment friendly, not only the classroom, for the student. All staff need to be made aware of these recommendations. So have you got a checklist document or an easy document with the VI recommendations that can be shared with staff? Has key information been shared? And if there's shared classes, has this information been shared between different teachers in the classroom? Everybody needs to know, not one person, because if that one person's not there, then often things are not put in place for the VI student. Further advice, or if you've got any questions on anything that's been shown and talked about in this training PowerPoint, please contact Emma or Julie at the email addresses below. There are also many further VI training videos on the link at the bottom on the Arthur Mellows VI Hub website. Thank you for watching.